Country, a Berenstain Bearcast. I am your host, Phil Gonzalez, and I'm going to be honest with you up top. No, I did not forget a book. I did something really close to that, though, but in a weird backwards way. I'll get to that in a second. First of all, I wasn't even going to record an episode this week, but then I thought I owed it to you people. But I am super busy this week. I don't like to skip ever. Anyone who lives with me has familiar with the fact that I do not like to skip episodes, but I'm super busy this week. I don't have time tonight, which is when I usually do a lot of my stuff. It's Thursday right now when I'm talking, and I have a performance tonight that I have to go do, that I want to go do. I'm looking forward to doing it, but that's taking all my time. I was busy all day today with work. I'm busy all day tomorrow. I am slammed, and so I said to myself, let's just repeat an episode. I'll just do a rerun. But then I looked at my list. I was like, what books do I have coming up? And I saw one on the list that I was like, well, this looks like it could be pretty simple. And so I got a copy of it and I started in on it. And I said, this is going to be really simple because I've done it before. What do I mean I've done it before? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this on YouTube, and remember, you can watch new episodes on YouTube. But if you're listening to it, you can't watch it. I mean, you can still watch it if you're listening to it, but you'd have to stop and go watch it as opposed to listening to it. But if you're watching this, I will show you. And if you're listening to this, I will tell you what is going on and why everything is weird. And I guess just what it is that I came to understand. Because this week's book, and this isn't going to be very long, and I'm going to show you why. This week's book is The Berenstain Bears, God's Wonderful World. It's a Zonderkid's book, a Living Lights book. I'm kind of done with the religious stuff right now, so I'm glad that what happened this week happened. By Jan and Mike Berenstain, and if you look at the cover, it says right there, written by Jan and Mike Berenstain, stickers included, Living Lights faith story. And I looked at the cover of this, and I said, this looks really familiar. Like, I think I've seen this book before. Have I done this book? So I Googled it up, and no wonderful worlds in my history of deep in bear country. But I kept thinking it looked familiar. I started reading it, and I was like, I know I've read this story. Maybe I just read it once. Maybe I picked it up a long time ago and read it, and I was like, okay, I'll never have to think about this again. It could be that. It could be that. But it's not that, because I'm gonna show you. Okay, so at the bottom of the cover, Berenstain Bears, God's Wonderful World. It says written by Jan and Mike Berenstain in red, and underneath that is purple words. And in those purple words, it's very tiny, so you can't really even see it in the video. If you squint your eyes though and get really close to the book, you see that it says, previously titled, All Things Bright and Beautiful. That's right. This is a reissue of All Things Bright and Beautiful, which I did in August of 2022. A little over a year ago, I covered the Berenstain Bears. I actually done a summertime series of reruns, and then I think I kicked it off again, everything off again, with All Things Bright and Beautiful. And I talked about the song All Things Bright and Beautiful. I talked about the James Herriot novels All Things Bright and Beautiful. I talked about a lot of things. It was a pretty packed episode. So if you want a good coverage of Berenstain Bears, God's Wonderful World, check out my episode, The Berenstain Bears, All Things Bright and Beautiful, from August of 2022. Not even that far back. The fact that I had to be reminded of the fact that I had done it says a lot about my memory. I had a conference today for work. I had to go to Brooklyn Park, which, if you're not from the Twin Cities area, is like 30 minutes away from where I had been. I had to drop Mitzi off, then I had to drive all the way to Brooklyn Park. About a 30-minute drive in morning traffic. I actually get halfway to, and I had to be there on time. I get halfway to Mitzi's school with her, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I forgot to take my anxiety medication. Now, if you have adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, then you know that one of the things about having ADHD is, particularly day wrecking ADHD, is that routine is important. Keeping your routine, very important. And anything that throws that routine off will have like a domino effect. Like it'll just start throwing everything off. And this morning I was super proud of myself because I had to leave the house really early. I had to drive the kids to school. I had to make my way to Brooklyn Park, but I also had to make sure that my camera was charged. I had to make sure that my tablet was charged. I had to get interview questions ready. I had to make sure that I had lined up all the people I was going to be photographing at the conference because I was working the conference. I wasn't attending the conference. But I had to make sure I was all this. I had to get dressed up. I had to put on a nice shirt. I had to put on nice pants, a jacket, nice socks. I'm still wearing those. My entire morning was in disarray, and I was so proud of myself for having gotten everything prepared on time, in advance, get in the car, I'm driving the kids to school. I forgot to take my anxiety medication. And the problem is, the very thing that piques my anxiety is the very thing that made me forget my anxiety medication. So I sort of go off for a little while. Not because I'm feeling the effects of not having my anxiety medication, but because I'm starting to get anxiety from not having taken my anxiety meds. I actually write to my coworker, one of my team members, and I was just like, just FYI, I forgot my anxiety meds, FYI. And she was so nice. She offered me one of hers, which is a different medication than I take. And I was like, I'm not even going to dip my toes in those waters because that's more like just doing drugs at work, which I'm not averse to, but I never would do. So I had anxiety. It's not that I had anxiety all day, but I felt weird. Like I felt jittery part of the morning and it's kind of all over the place. I mean, the anxiety meds don't do anything for the ADHD. They don't keep my mind organized, but they make it so that I don't worry about my mind being all over the place. Just kind of the worst day to have forgotten my meds. I get home finally late afternoon and I was like, it's too late to take them because I'm gonna have to take them in the morning anyway. We're just taking a mulligan on that today. I don't remember why I brought that up except to say that I don't have much to say about God's wonderful world. But if you want to take a look at just what's inside God's wonderful world, just to see that it's the exact same book. I mean, what I'm showing you right now on screen, if you're watching, is actually the interior of the Berenstain Bears All Things Bright and Beautiful. And if you pull out God's Wonderful World, which I have a physical copy of right here, it arrived today. I was so excited. I was ahead of the game. If you just want to take a look, it's literally the exact same book. Like, it's not even like Mike didn't, like, there's no rewrites or anything. They just retitled it. It's just all God's Wonderful World. Well, God's Wonderful World used to be. Let me see if I can pull this up. So you can see what the covers used to look like. Yeah, there we go. All things bright and beautiful, God's Wonderful World. If you could see both the covers next to each other, they're the same thing. They're the same book. Like, there's no difference except that at the bottom of God's Wonderful World it says previously titled All Things Bright and Beautiful. Also, All Things Bright and Beautiful was written in a different font. In green. God's Wonderful World is written in red. I don't know why they changed the name. It didn't occur to me to ask because I only just discovered this. I'm going to assume it was for marketing reasons. I can't imagine any other reason. Just like, you know what? All Things Bright and Beautiful just doesn't mean enough to readers that to know what's going on in the book. Just make it a little more obvious. So God's Wonderful World, which is what the book is about. Because if you remember from our previous coverage of it, it's just about Mrs. Ursula, the Sunday school teacher, who's really good at teaching the kids things. We get a hilarious shot of two cubs dressed as a camel for the Christmas pageant, taking the kids on a nature walk. Like, that's all it is. It's a nature walk book. It's a gorgeous book. I remember saying that in the episode about All Things Bright and Beautiful. It's a beautiful book. Mike really outdid himself. The colors are great. The characters are nice and crisp. I didn't really know if it was Mike or Jan that was in charge of this, but Mike's really good at these nature shots, so I just operate under the assumption that a lot of this is him. Again, I could be wrong. If it was Jan, forgive me. Just, it feels like Mike. The faces feel like Mike. But yeah, the Cubs just go around. They sing the song All Things Bright and Beautiful as they walk along. We get this one incredible 2-page spread of bear country. Like, if I could get the text taken out of it, I would hang this on my wall. It's a beautiful landscape of just from looking atop the hill, a hill. You see Farmer Ben's farm. You see the bear's treehouse. You see Big Bear River, Great Grizzly Mountain. I think in the distance you can see, I don't think that's the Bruins house. It might be the Bruins house. It looks kind of like Mrs. McGrizz's house. I can't tell. You see the chapel in the woods way in the background. You see bears canoeing. You see a beautiful bridge going over the Purple Mountains Majesties. You see it. Oh, there's Lizzie Bruin's house down at the bottom. If I could get a print of this, I would hang it up. I'd hang it up on the wall. I would probably consider replacing Homestar Runner behind me on the wall for a chance to have this beautiful shot of bear country. It's gorgeous. And I remember saying that in my review that it's not the greatest book in the world, but it's beautiful to look at. Just a nice, beautiful book. Purple Mountain Majesty, sunsets, we see Mrs. Ben, we see Farmer Ben tending their garden. And the whole time, Cousin Fred is reciting the lines from the song, All Things Bright and Beautiful, and relating them to things they see in bear country. I particularly like a shot of, he says, the cold wind in the winter, the pleasant summer sun, the ripe fruits in the garden, he made them every one. And we see, I guess it's Cousin Fred's dad, out collecting firewood in the middle of a snowstorm, which is weird. Keep it closer to your house, my friend. But it's just some nice, sort of like seasonal things the bears do. And a lot of watermelons, some great watermelons. This is the one, I remember this is the episode where I discussed at length Minnesotans' obsession with Duck Duck Goose versus Duck Duck Grey Duck, which was recently featured on an episode of Judge John Hodgman, where he declared that Duck Duck Grey Duck is the superior of the two games, which made the audience go absolutely wild because it was filmed in Minnesota. And I'm going to go on record once again saying absolutely nobody cares. Nobody cares. The Duck Duck Goose, Duck Duck Grey Duck, it doesn't matter. It's a meaningless, it's one of those conversations that Minnesotans think is interesting, but it's not. It's not interesting. Just like, where's the original Juicy Lucy from? Who cares? It's just a burger. It's a hamburger with cheese inside the meat. You're allowed to have more than one person come up with that idea. That's what I say. That's what I say. But if you haven't been to Matt's Bar, come to Matt's Bar if you're in the Twin Cities and have a Juicy Lucy. You just got to do it. You'll wait outside, but I mean, I was going to say you'll thank yourself for it, but you will have eaten a Juicy Lucy at the end of the day. The kids play Duck Duck Goose. Cousin Fred forgets the end of the song, and so while they head back to the chapel in the woods, they recite there's the last bit of the song. The parents come to pick them up. They go pick up Honey Bear from nursery school. They learned all about God's creatures great and small. He gave us eyes to see them and lips that we might tell how great is God Almighty, who has made all things well. And there's activities and questions from Brother and Sister Bear at the end. And what's interesting is that these are the same questions. The questions didn't change. But this is one of so what I've been showing on the YouTube video, on my video, is the Kindle edition of All Things Bright and Beautiful. And I'm holding God's Wonderful World. Now, the Kindle edition of All Things Bright and Beautiful, just for another illustration of how inconsistent all the ebook stuff is with the bears, actually has activities and questions from Brother and Sister Bear at the end of it. What new activity has Mrs. Ursula planned for her Sunday school class? Nature walk. Why did she plan it? God made everything in nature. Name some of the gifts from God. Birds and worms. Talk about your favorite creatures God has created. Me, me, me. Using art supplies as well as items from nature like leaves, grass, and twigs, create a scene showing some of God's creation. Share it with the family. Sounds like a good idea. And gather a group of family members and friends and join together to clean up a local playground, park, or neighborhood to show God just how much you appreciate and respect his creation and his creatures. Again, good acts, putting your money where your mouth is, walking the talk, that's Mike. You feel like anything in this list, that's the most important part. Walk the talk, be a good citizen, be a good person. So, I mean, that's the Berenstain Bears God's Wonderful World. There's not a whole lot to it. I have nothing much to add because I feel like I said it already. And that's what's funny is, so All Things Bright and Beautiful, obviously the version that came out first, God's Wonderful World, the version that came out second. However, you can't buy God's Wonderful World as an ebook. You got to buy it as All Things Bright and Beautiful. It's still for sale as an ebook, but it's going to be bright and beautiful. If you want God's Wonderful World, you can still buy a physical copy of that, but you can also buy a physical copy of Bright and Beautiful, which is weird to me that they're both available, but whatever. I'm sure there's a lot of backstock. Got to move those books somehow. In any case, that's the Berenstain Bears God's Wonderful World. I wasn't going to cover anything this week, but I felt like I should do something, and this was an easy one, because if you want to know more about the book, listen to that episode, the Berenstain Bears All Things Bright and Beautiful. Now, I gotta go. I gotta finish up work, and I gotta get ready for my performance tonight at Strike Theater. It's November 16th as I record this. By the time this episode drops, I will have done it. Assume it went well. My performance, a storytelling event. I'm not a storyteller. I'm not a comedian because I'm not funny. And I'm not a storyteller because I'm not that disciplined. I'm just a person with a microphone who gets up and says words at people. And if you appreciate that, then you'll appreciate my thing, my get up, get 'em up there. That's what I'm going to call it. Not stand up. It's not storytelling. It's Phil gets up there and shimmies and shakes in front of a crowd. And also, no anxiety meds, which means no anxiety. That's how that works. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening. This weekend, I'll be recording, I believe, our first in months episode of Pizza Toast with Christy Admiral. So expect a Pizza Toast episode to drop. It's going to be on The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the movie that just came out, because we covered all those books months ago, and got a episode of It's Del Toro Time coming out on Joyce Carol Oates' story. So if you like the Oates my goats, that woman's written about 100 novels about a Brazilian short stories, plays, poems, criticism. She's still kicking it. She writes like a novel a year. I don't get it. She's good at it. Joyce Carol Oates my goats, if you want to listen to that on It's Del Toro Time. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all next time, deep in Bear Country.